All right, so you want to sharpen your focus, right? I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into all sorts of research and practical advice about how to improve concentration.
Sounds good.
We'll be exploring brain games, the benefits of spending time in nature, and even how what you eat can affect your focus.
Interesting. I'm ready.
Awesome. We've got two great articles for us today, one from Healthline and one from Better Up.
Okay.
Healthline's is called 14 Tips to Improve Your Concentration,
Okay.
and Better Up's is called 15 Ways to Improve Your Concentration Even When You Are Busy.
Those sound pretty comprehensive.
Both of them are jam-packed with strategies to help us sharpen our mental focus.
Looking forward to it.
But before we jump into specific tips, both articles start by defining what concentration actually is.
Huh?
And it's more than just like having a long attention span.
Right, exactly.
It's really about, like being able to direct your mental energy.
Yeah, almost like a laser beam
Yeah.
toward a specific thought or task.
And pushing aside all those like other thoughts and distractions that are constantly trying to grab our attention.
Ugh, yeah, it's like a constant battle in there sometimes.
It really is. And Better Up even mentioned that just seeing your smartphone can mess with your concentration.
It makes sense.
It's like our brains are hardwired to, crave novelty, and every ping, every notification is like a little reward.
Definitely. Like it's pulling us away from what we're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. And both articles outline a bunch of factors that can affect our focus. Everything from what we eat to how much sleep we get to whether or not we take breaks.
It's amazing how all these things that seem totally unrelated are actually connected when it comes to concentration.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And Healthline gives us a whole list of factors: brain training, sleep, exercise, being out in nature, even supplements.
Interesting.
But Better Up takes more of a big picture approach, kind of grouping things into categories like distractions, sleep, physical activity, diet, and environment.
So both articles are telling us that we need to kind of think holistically about improving concentration. Right?
Yeah, it's not like a one-size-fits-all magic bullet solution.
Right. It's more about understanding how all the different pieces fit together,
Exactly.
like a puzzle.
Exactly. It's about understanding how our bodies and our minds and even the world around us, like all these things affect our ability to focus.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's break down some of these tips. Both articles recommend, those brain training games like Sudoku, puzzles, or chess.
Yeah. The kind that really make you think.
Yeah. Like a mental workout.
Exactly. And those activities help engage our working memory.
And that's different from long-term memory, right? I always get those two confused.
Right. So working memory is essentially your brain's mental notepad, where you temporarily store and manipulate information.
Okay, I see. So by doing those brain training exercises, we're kind of like strengthening that mental muscle.
Exactly. The more we challenge our working memory, the more efficient it becomes. You're basically building mental endurance.
Oh, wow. I like that. Mental endurance.
And what's really amazing is that research shows brain training games can benefit people of all ages.
Yeah, it's like use it or lose it.
Exactly.
It's interesting. Healthline pointed out that those brain games can be especially beneficial for older adults.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to, maintain that cognitive function as we age.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And speaking of keeping our brains sharp, both articles emphasize the importance of sleep.
Oh, absolutely. Sleep is crucial.
Better Up went pretty deep into how sleep deprivation can really mess with us cognitively, things like slower thinking and poor reasoning. It's kind of scary to think about.
It is, because, sleep is when our brains consolidate memories, clear out toxins, and just recharge for the day ahead.
Yeah, I always thought I was pretty good at functioning on less sleep, but maybe I'm not giving my brain enough credit.
We all probably think that.
And speaking of things we might not be giving enough credit to, Healthline mentioned that even being slightly dehydrated can affect our focus.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Our brains are about 75% water.
Oh, wow.
So even mild dehydration can have a real impact on brain function, including concentration.
Yeah. I'm definitely guilty of not drinking enough water throughout the day.
Most people are.
Okay, what about exercise? It seems like both sources agree that exercise is good for concentration, but they highlight different aspects of it.
Right, they do.
What do you find interesting?
Well, Healthline mentioned that exercise can lower blood glucose, which in turn helps with focus.
Really? I've got to admit, I had no idea. I always thought of exercise as like a way to blow off steam and de-stress, not something that actually affects my blood sugar.
Well, it makes sense though, right? Because physical activity helps your body regulate insulin, which in turn helps stabilize blood sugar levels.
Oh, okay.
Stable blood sugar basically means a steady supply of energy for your brain.
That's fascinating. It really makes you realize the connection between your physical health and your mental sharpness.
Definitely connected. And I do feel so much more clear-headed after a good workout.
Me too. It's like a mental reset.
Yeah, that's the mind-body connection at work.
Yeah. And Better Up mentioned how exercise can help relieve muscle tension,
That's right.
which can lead to more mental clarity, right?
Absolutely. Less tension, clearer mind.
All this talk about exercise makes me want to go for a run right now.
Me too.
Okay, now let's talk about something I can really get behind. Spending time in nature.
Oh, I love that.
Both articles make a strong case for its positive effects on concentration.
And it's interesting because it seems like our brains are just hardwired to respond positively to natural environments.
It's probably, like going back to our evolutionary roots, when our ancestors had to rely on all their senses to survive in the wild.
Yeah.
So are you saying that even just seeing some greenery or smelling some fresh air could help us tap into that kind of deep-seated sense of calm and focus?
Exactly. Studies have shown that nature exposure can lower stress hormones, reduce mental fatigue, and just generally improve cognitive performance.
Hmm.
And what's even more amazing is that even indoor plants can have a positive effect.
Wait, seriously, so the plant on my desk isn't just decoration?
It's a brain booster.
I love that. Okay, now let's talk about music. Both articles are a bit more cautious on this one, saying it really depends on the type of music you listen to.
Yeah, lyrics can be really distracting if you're trying to focus on reading or writing.
Yeah, makes sense.
They engage the language processing centers in your brain, which kind of compete with the task at hand.
Right, so it's all about finding that right, like, background soundtrack for your brain, something that kind of soothes and energizes but doesn't pull your attention away.
Right.
What kind of music do you find helpful for focusing?
For me, it's either classical music or nature sounds.
Okay,
Something creates a calming and focused atmosphere without being too distracting.
now let's talk about food,
Okay,
something we all have to deal with.
we got to eat.
Both articles emphasize the connection between what we eat and our ability to concentrate.
Well, our brains need a constant supply of energy to function optimally,
Hmm.
and that energy comes from the food we eat.
So Healthline specifically mentions the Mindy diet, fatty fish, and eggs
Okay.
as good choices for concentration. And Better Up focuses on regulating blood sugar and getting enough brain-boosting fats, like nuts, berries, and avocados.
Yeah. The brain's a very energy-demanding organ,
It is.
and it needs a steady supply of glucose to function properly.
Hmm. But here's something that surprised me. Better Up mentions that low-fat diets can actually be bad for focus.
Yeah.
We're always told to avoid fat, but you're saying it's actually essential for brain function. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Well, yeah, it's true that we tend to think of fat as the enemy, but our brains actually need certain types of fats to function properly.
Okay.
Things like those brain-boosting fats we just talked about. Omega-3s, which are essential for building and maintaining healthy brain cells.
So we need a certain amount of fat to keep our brains running smoothly.
We do.
That's really interesting. I'm realizing that there's a lot more to nutrition than I thought.
It's definitely a complex topic.
It is.
And speaking of complex, we should probably talk about caffeine.
Uh-oh.
Healthline brings it up as a potential concentration booster,
Oh, yeah.
but Better Up doesn't mention it at all.
Interesting. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think caffeine is friend or foe when it comes to focus?
Well, caffeine is kind of a double-edged sword.
How so?
It can definitely give you a short-term boost in alertness and focus.
Oh, yeah. I know that feeling. My first cup of coffee in the morning definitely gets me going.
Exactly.
Huh.
But the problem is it's not a long-term solution.
Oh, okay. So you're saying it's more like a quick fix than a sustainable strategy.
Exactly. Over-reliance on caffeine can actually lead to dependence, anxiety, and even insomnia,
Oh, wow.
all of which can sabotage your concentration in the long run.
So it's like you're borrowing energy from the future and having to pay it back later.
Kind of, yeah.
I can see that. Sometimes when I have too much caffeine, I end up feeling jittery and anxious, which makes it hard to focus.
Definitely.
So it sounds like moderation is key, just like with everything else.
Absolutely. Now, another topic Healthline brought up was supplements. They listed a bunch that are supposed to, enhance concentration,
Mm-hmm.
but they were very clear that you should always consult with a doctor before taking any.
Yeah, I've always been a little skeptical of supplements. It seems like there's a new one on the market every week, promising to be like the magic solution to all our problems.
Well, there's a good reason to be cautious. supplements aren't regulated by the FDA in the same way that medications are.
Oh, right.
So you can't always be sure what you're getting. And then there's also the risk of interactions with other medications you might be taking.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's crucial to talk to your doctor first.
Yeah, definitely good advice. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about brain training, sleep, exercise, spending time in nature, music, and even being mindful of our diet and caffeine intake.
Lots of great strategies.
It is. But Healthline also mentioned something called concentration workouts.
Oh, yeah.
And it sounds pretty intense. Can you explain what those are all about?
Sure. Think of them like a mental boot camp. You're basically dedicating your full attention to a specific activity for a set period of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like a mindfulness exercise on steroids. The idea is to train your brain to resist distractions and just stay focused on that single task.
So it's about building that mental muscle.
Exactly. And the activities can be surprisingly simple, actually.
Oh,
Things like drawing or doodling for 15 minutes,
okay.
tossing a ball back and forth with someone,
Mm-hmm.
even trying to blink as little as possible for a few minutes.
Wait, seriously?
Yep.
Yeah.
It sounds a little torturous, but the point is to push your limits and see how long you can maintain focus on one very specific thing. You're essentially practicing controlling your attention.
Okay, I can see the value in that,
Good.
even if it sounds a bit challenging.
Challenge is good. It's how we grow.
Uh,
Now, speaking of challenges, both articles are pretty adamant about avoiding multitasking.
oh, man. That's my weakness. I always feel like I'm juggling a million things at once.
We all do. But the truth is, multitasking is actually a myth.
What? Really?
Our brains just aren't designed to do multiple things well at the same time. When we think we're multitasking, we're actually just switching back and forth between tasks really quickly.
So we're not actually doing two things at once. We're just rapidly toggling between them.
Exactly. And each time we switch, there's a cognitive cost. It takes time and mental energy to reorient ourselves to that new task.
Oh, wow.
And that can lead to errors, reduce productivity, and increase stress.
So basically, focus on one thing at a time. No more trying to write an email while also planning a meeting and scrolling through social media.
You got it. Single tasking is the way to go.
Okay.
Now, there's one last point from Healthline that I think is really important to bring up. They remind us that persistent concentration problems could be a sign of something deeper going on.
Like what?
Things like ADHD, anxiety, or even vision problems.
Oh, wow. You know, it's easy to just think that we need to try harder, but sometimes it might actually be something else.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where seeking professional help can be really crucial.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really struggling with concentration, despite trying all the things we've talked about, it's probably worth talking to your doctor or a therapist.
Yeah.
They can help you figure out if there's something else going on
Mm-hmm.
and maybe develop a treatment plan that's more tailored to your specific needs.
That's a good reminder. It's okay to ask for help.
It is.
Sometimes we need a little extra support.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Brain training games, nature walks, the importance of sleep and diet.
Mhm.
We've explored a whole range of strategies for improving concentration, but I'm curious, what are your biggest takeaways from all of this? What stands out to you as like the most important point?
Well, for me, it really comes back to that holistic approach we talked about earlier. Improving concentration isn't about finding that one magic solution.
Right.
It's about understanding how all of these different factors, our physical health, our mental state, our environment, all work together to affect our ability to focus.
Yeah. Once we understand that, we can start making small changes in our lives.
Exactly.
That can have a big impact.
That's the beauty of knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah, I love that. It's empowering to realize that we have more control over our focus than we think.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about willpower or discipline. It's about really setting ourselves up for success.
I love that. And speaking of setting ourselves up for success, I think that's a great transition into our final thought for today. We've talked about a lot of different strategies, but I'd like to leave you with a question to consider. What are some small changes you can make to your environment to support your focus?
That's a great question. Think about your workspace, for example.
Yeah.
Think about the lighting, the noise level, even the colors and textures around you. Are they conducive to calm and focus, or are they actually distracting?
You know, I never really thought about how, like, the color of my walls or the clutter on my desk could actually be affecting my concentration. But now that you mention it, I'm kind of seeing things in a new light.
Sometimes it's those small, seemingly insignificant details they can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, out of sight, out of mind. If you can minimize distractions and create a sense of order in your environment, it can really free up mental energy to focus on the task at hand.
You've given me a lot to think about. I love these deep dives.
We too.
There's always something new to learn.
That's the beauty of knowledge, right? It's an ongoing exploration. And speaking of exploration, I'd love to hear from our listeners. What concentration tips have worked for you? What are you still struggling with? Share your insights, because we can all learn from each other.
Absolutely. We're all in this together, right?
Yeah.
Trying to navigate this like crazy, distracting world and make the most of our mental abilities. So to wrap things up, it seems like improving our concentration is a multifaceted journey.
It is?
It's about understanding how our brains work, what factors help us focus or make it harder, and then figuring out which strategies work best for us.
Exactly.
It's not about being perfect, it's about making progress.
You got it.
And every small step you take towards improving your concentration is a step towards unlocking your full potential.
Love it.
So keep experimenting, keep learning, and most importantly, keep focusing on what matters to you.
Great advice.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of concentration. Until next time, stay sharp.
It's kind of like you're borrowing energy from the future and having to pay it back later with interest.
Oh, I like that analogy. Makes sense. So moderation is key, right? Just like with everything else.
Exactly. Now, another topic that Healthline brought up was supplements. They listed a bunch that supposedly enhance concentration, but they were very clear that you should always consult with a doctor before taking any.
Yeah, good advice. I'm always a little skeptical of supplements. It seems like there's a new one on the market every week promising to be the magic bullet.
Well, there's a good reason to be cautious. Supplements aren't regulated by the FDA in the same way that medications are, so you can't always be sure what you're getting. Plus, there's the risk of interactions with other medications you might be taking.
Right. That's a good point. So talk to your doctor first, folks. Always good advice. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Brain training, sleep, exercise, being in nature, picking the right music, and even watching what we eat and drink.
Yeah, lots of great strategies.
There are. But Healthline also mentioned something called concentration workouts.
Concentration workouts.
Yeah, and it sounds pretty intense. Can you explain what those are all about?
Sure. Think of them like mental boot camp. You're basically dedicating your full attention to a specific activity for a set period of time.
Okay.
It's almost like mindfulness exercises, but amped up. The idea is to train your brain to resist distractions and stay laser focused on that one task.
So like building mental muscle.
Exactly. And the activities themselves can be surprisingly simple.
Oh, okay. Like what?
Well, things like drawing or doodling for 15 minutes,
huh.
tossing a ball back and forth with someone,
Uh-huh.
even trying to blink as little as possible for a few minutes.
Wait, seriously? Trying not to blink.
Yep. Sounds a little torturous, I know. But the point is to push your limits and see how long you can hold your focus on one very specific thing. You're practicing controlling your attention.
Okay, I can see how that would be valuable, even if it does sound a little challenging.
Challenge is good. That's how we grow. Now, speaking of challenges, both articles are pretty clear about avoiding multitasking.
Ugh, that's my downfall. I'm always trying to juggle a million things at once.
We all do. But the truth is, multitasking is a myth. Our brains just aren't wired to do multiple things well at the same time.
Really? But when I feel like I'm multitasking, I am getting a lot done.
What's really happening is you're rapidly switching back and forth between tasks, not doing them simultaneously.
So not actually doing two things at once, just toggling between them.
Right. And each time you switch, there's a cognitive cost. It takes time and mental energy to reorient yourself to that new task.
That makes sense.
And that can lead to more errors, being less productive, and feeling more stressed.
Okay, so the takeaway is single tasking is the way to go. No more trying to answer emails, plan a meeting, and scroll social media all at the same time.
Exactly. Focus on one thing, give it your full attention, and then move on to the next. Now, one last point from Healthline that I think is really important. They point out that if you have ongoing problems with concentration, it could be a sign of something more serious.
Oh, like what?
Things like ADHD, anxiety, even vision problems.
Wow. It's easy to just think that we need to try harder to focus, but it could be something else entirely.
And that's when seeking professional help is important. If you're trying all these strategies and still struggling, it might be time to talk to your doctor or a therapist.
They could help figure out what's going on.
Right, and come up with a treatment plan that really works for you.
Good reminder. It's okay to ask for help. Sometimes we need that extra support. Okay, so we have covered a lot today. Brain training games to nature walks, sleep, diet.
It's a lot.
We've really explored all kinds of ways to improve concentration. What are your biggest takeaways? What stands out to you?
Well, I think it all goes back to that holistic approach we talked about. Improving concentration isn't about finding that magic bullet solution.
Right, there's no quick fix.
Right. It's about understanding how our physical health, our mental state, and our environment all impact our ability to focus.
And once we understand that, we can start making changes, even small ones, that can have a big impact on our ability to concentrate.
Absolutely. And that's what's so great about knowledge.
What do you mean?
It's a continuous exploration. And speaking of exploring, I'd love to hear from our listeners. What concentration tips work for you? What do you still struggle with? Share what you've learned, because we can all learn from each other.
Exactly. We're all in this together, trying to figure out how to navigate this crazy, distracting world and use our brains to their full potential. So, wrapping things up, improving concentration is a journey.
It really is.
We need to understand how our brains work, figure out what helps or hurts our focus, and then find the strategies that work best for each of us.
I love that.
It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. Every step we take towards better concentration helps unlock our full potential. So keep experimenting, keep learning, and most importantly, keep focusing on what matters most to you.
Great advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into concentration. Until next time, stay sharp. It's like, are they helping you focus or secretly sabotaging you?
Good point. So it's not just about like decluttering and having good lighting.
Well, those are important, but it goes deeper than that. It's also about things like color. Think about it. Are the colors around you calming or stimulating? Do they promote a sense of focus, or do they make you feel restless?
Wow, I never thought about it like that before.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Sometimes those small, almost invisible details can make all the difference.
You've given me a lot to think about. This is why I love doing these deep dives. There's always something new to learn.
That's the beauty of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
It's an ongoing exploration. And speaking of exploration, I'd love to hear from our listeners.
Oh, yeah. Good idea.
What are some concentration tips that have worked for you? What are you still struggling with? Share your insights, because we can all learn from each other.
Absolutely. We're all in this together, right?
Right.
Trying to navigate this crazy world and make the most of our mental abilities. So, to wrap things up, it seems like improving our concentration is a journey, not a destination.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It's about understanding how our brains work, what helps us focus, what throws us off track, and then finding the strategies that work best for each of us as individuals.
That's it. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about progress, right?
Exactly. Every little step we take towards better concentration is a step towards reaching our full potential. So keep experimenting, keep learning, and most importantly, keep focusing on what matters most to you.
Fantastic advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into concentration. Until next time, stay sharp.